Welcome to Next Level Thinking, Episode 3, Critical Thinking and Media Manipulation. I want to start off with a quote from Socrates, two quotes actually. The unexamined life is not worth living, and to find yourself, think for yourself. I want to start off with logical fallacy. Logical fallacy is a failure in logic. And there's many different kinds. I have a list that I will link of about 100 different kinds. There's many logical fallacies, but there are some that are much more common than others. And there's a website that also has a cool interactive list of common logical fallacies. Logical fallacies include the bandwagon effect, ad hominem attack, and the Stallman fallacy. Those are some of the common ones. In the usefulness of knowing logical fallacies is in understanding it is necessary for critical thinking, and it can help you understand how to not be manipulated by people or scammed or be led down directions that are not suitable or positive for you in any ways. Another reason thinking for yourself is important is that many of the worst events in history were because of those who could not think for themselves and decided to go with the group, far more than those who thought for themselves and did harm to others in their own individual thought. So you compare the number of individuals who murdered millions of people in Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia versus the number of large groups of people in Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia was far greater than murders by individuals. The reason that these people murdered other people was because they were tricked into doing it through, well, one of the ways is not understanding logical fallacies. If you understand logical fallacies, it's difficult to be tricked into doing things such as that. And many of those who carried out these orders also suffered a great deal of mental issues, for sure, and also many of them had charges put against them, such as in the Nuremberg trials for the Nazis. So as you can see, you do not want to be falling under the problem of lacking critical thinking skills. This could also help you avoid scams, and which of course could improve your financial situation and also give you more time because you're not falling for scams. Like a scam could include, say, logical fallacy. One of them is the sunken costs fallacy, and it's a fallacy where if you already invested in something, you want to keep investing even if you've realized that it's no longer worth investing in. You'll continuously invest in it because the logic of your brain says, well, I've already invested so much, so I don't want to abandon this, so I want to keep on doing the action or keep on in the investment. So an example for me is I sometimes will play a video game even though I don't like the video game anymore because I've put so much time into it already building my character, or I spent money on it but I don't enjoy it anymore, so why should I continue doing it? But I've caught myself doing that recently, and I've reduced the amount of time wasted playing video games that I don't even enjoy anymore. So that's one way that can help free up your time by understanding logical fallacies such as sunken costs. So it helps in many aspects of your life. It can also help you understand the truthfulness to statements that you hear, which is very useful for anyone with financial or health problems, of course, because there are many people who are trying to trick you into thinking certain things are healthy for you, or that certain financial programs or investments are worthwhile, when in fact, if they were looked at rationally, they are not. In order to be a critical thinker and think for yourself, you also will need to be able to resist negative social pressure. Not all social pressure is bad, because people can be pressured to do great things. Like social pressure, maybe say someone was raised in a church setting and then they became a leader of a charity and donated, say, millions of dollars to people in aid. But I'm talking about you want to resist negative peer pressure or social pressure. And I have resources that can help you with that to make sure that you don't fall into pressure that is negative. And there's two large experiments that show that even if you think you're someone who's immune to it, you're not, probably. In the Milgram experiment, that 75% of people are willing to kill someone if they were told by a higher authority. There was an instructor, and there was the subject, and there was someone giving electric shocks. And if the person who was taking the test were getting an answer right, the subject was supposed to give a shock to him. And whenever the shock was administered, and this was just not a real shock, it would appear to be a shock because they made the person giving the question scream and show signs of pain, such as yelling or banging on the walls. And it showed that 75% of people would go all the way to the maximum voltage, which would actually kill the person if the shocks were really being administered. And whenever people would doubt the experiment, when they would say he or she is experiencing so much pain, and the person in authority, which was someone wearing a lab coat who was the person who was doing the experiment, would say things such as continue or you must continue the experiment, and most of the time that did work. And it's just shocking to think you could go down the street and 3 out of 4 people would be willing to kill you if it was done under certain circumstances, that they would be willing to kill you. And also another one is the Stanford prison experiment, which shows some of the ways that through humiliation and through divide and conquer, how someone who wishes to influence people negatively by commanding them to obey them, how they can use humiliation against one person. And I have a video on that I'll have linked. It's complicated, so I'll just put a link to it, but it goes more into depth in the analysis. And some people would say in society that we're reaching a post-truth. This is something I just looked up recently, this term, and it seems it's basically the idea of that people are using emotions and intuition to try to rationalize, which is not what emotions and intuition's for. You can't use your emotions and intuition to solve math problems such as 2 + 2 = 4. You can't use your intuition and emotions, and that's what's dangerous about using them. Is, say you're a psychotic individual and you say, well, I feel like this is right to murder people. Well, it's not right. It's a objective fact that murdering is wrong. And yes, morals are objective. Morals are objective in the sense that there are some things that are absolutely wrong to do to others. So that is what I mean by morally objective. But the post-truth is that people see facts as they want to see them, and they are biased using confirmation bias. They only want to see the facts that they want, that support their view, instead of seeing all the facts and to get a better understanding, instead of just getting facts that confirm their own worldview, which can cause what is called tunnel vision. And there's 3 basic ways, according to Aristotle, that you can influence people. Ethos is the appeal to authority, which is itself actually is a logical fallacy many times, because ethos is the appeal to authority, which is almost always a logical fallacy. But ethos is using credibility. It doesn't always have to be authority. It can be credibility to support an argument. So they can say, I am a doctor, therefore trust me with this procedure. Pathos is convincing someone using emotions. And this one can be dangerous in some situations, but not as much as ethos. Pathos can be a great motivator for positive change, even more than logos, but it can also be more deadlier than logos in convincing people to do harmful or wrong or immoral things. But pathos is using emotions to convince someone. So let's use a positive example. A positive example would be by having, say, a poster of a child who is crying, and you'd say, donate to this charity to help this child, and that's a positive usage of pathos. It's emotional appeal. And then logos is convincing someone using rationality. This one is not very negative usually. It's usually positive. Not as much as pathos, or at least can be, but it's not as negative either. It's fairly neutral, or at least positive. But of course, that is assuming that the person is using actual facts, then it is positive. A negative appeal of pathos would be, say, a propaganda piece by ISIS to say that ISIS wants to make you fear an enemy, so that way you'll give more power to ISIS. That's their example. Logos is convincing through logic. It's more positives, and it can be neutral. It isn't really negative usually, as long as they're actually factual. So a logical appeal would be, the reason that you should exercise is that it's good for you. And this next part, I want to talk about the media. And to start off, I want to say that the mainstream media is basically completely controlled, and it's not benefiting you in any way by watching it. You're not getting the facts. It's making you depressed. It's making you unhealthy mentally and possibly even physically. It's lying to you. It's scamming you. And don't watch it. Just don't watch it. And I'm going to explain why. Well, for starters, all mainstream media, even local, is centrally controlled. So if you think that you're getting a a wide variety of information on media, you're not, because there is video evidence that all of the media channels local broadcast the same stories at all local levels. So say like the Fox News channel will have a local Fox channel. They will report the story the same in a city as in another city, exactly the same, word for word, no difference. And even different media channels such as Fox News and CNN will repeat the exact same words and have the same exact story, and it'll be different localities as well. Another is the Operation Mockingbird, which has been going on since the 70s, which pretty much confirms that the government has controlled the media. And it also should be noted that media has been under control of different corporations. At first, there was many media corporations, and I think now there's only 6 companies that control all of the media that's mainstream, which is about 90% of what the media that people see is. In a certain video, which I'll have linked, George Bush pretty much confirms that there is a long-standing covert prepackaged government media that's been going on since at least when George Bush was president. Some journalist is trying to question him about why doesn't the government disclose the fact that they're making media. They don't put a disclaimer on their media, and as you can see in the video, George Bush is not very, he seems almost a little embarrassed, like he's been exposed. There's also another video showing that news anchors, what they're saying with their lips might actually be not actually what they're saying, and that AI is basically putting words into their mouth. It's a video. They're doing it with Obama, and this was done years ago. The technology now is much more advanced, but it's a good video to show that what you see people saying on television may not actually be what they said. Another great video is staged protests done by CNN, although it's not just CNN, but CNN is one of the major medias that is one of the most dishonest media networks. And they stage protests, and the way they do it is of a group of people of say maybe 50 people, and they put a camera in front of them to record, and it looks like a large crowd, but in reality it's only 50 people in the street. But because of the angle, it looks like a large crowd. And there's also stage reports. An example would be in this one media report, there's 2 women who are speaking as if they were in different locations to each other on a report, when in fact they're actually in the same parking lot. And you can tell this by looking at the cars going by in the video that they're on the same parking lot. They're probably not that far away from each other, maybe a couple of feet. And one of the main reasons for the media also fearmonger the public into accepting things that they would not normally accept if they were not in a fearful state, because when you're in a fearful state or a stressed state, you look to leaders and others who you believe that you trust in order to come up with a solution, which is also a thing called problem reaction solution in the Hegelian dialect. So an example would be 9/11 caused a lot of people to be stressed and fearful, and so the first thing they look up to is the government to solve their problems, because they are the ones who they believed would help with terrorism. And one of the things that came out of the government was the Patriot Act, which is not patriotic at all. It is completely unpatriotic. It is, everything in that is completely unpatriotic because it violates some basic constitutional rights. Or if you don't see it as a constitution, you can just say it violates basic human rights, such as the 4th Amendment. And also it can be used to sell, say, pharmaceutical drugs, which say that you must take this or you will not be healthy, which is another example, and which can drain you financially and drain your health as well, because many pharmaceuticals have negative side effects and you have to be careful if you're going to do them. I would honestly recommend not doing it unless you're in a situation where you absolutely must. You can usually find a natural solution better for your ills. And the thing about the media is the media ultimately is, all of it may not even be real. It's not truly real. It's in the virtual world or the world of print. So you really have to consider what you see on the media, even if it's alternative media. Like, that is not real life. Real life is not on the internet or this podcast. It's everyday life that is outside of that, which is decreasing every day for people becoming more hooked on the virtual world, which I don't blame them, but you do have to have some basis in the real physical world. But your eyes generally and your senses that are in the physical real world are much more truthful than on the media, what you experience in real life. So you see on the media, well, they'll say that crime rates are rising and there's terrorist attacks everywhere. But if you go out in the world, you see that most people are generally, well, certainly not terrorists or criminals. So that just throws that out the window, and all statistics show that that's actually decreasing, that crimes and terrorist attacks are actually decreasing, at least in America. So you find that the world is not always as bad as it seems on the media, but of course sometimes the world actually really is bad, and certain media outlets are telling the truth, although I wouldn't trust the mainstream ones. But there are bad things that are going on, such as the Yemen starvation famine that is done by Saudi Arabia, that is actually going on, and that is bad. But of course you wouldn't know that if you were just to look around in your life. Sometimes personal life and experience, it's not enough because you don't understand what's going on outside your own realm or your house or your community. And in America, a lot of people, they see things through rose-colored glasses because they don't know how good they have it, and they don't see that there's very inhumane things going on, not just though in other countries, but in their own countries. There's a lot of stuff that goes on secretly or clandestine, things that go on, but overtly it can seem that things are going pretty well, and in some ways they are. It's certainly not as bad as the media will say that life is. They're trying to get you to be fearful of things that you should not be fearful of. You should be more afraid of things such as government corruption or police brutality or something of that sort. Not, oh, my neighbor might be a terrorist. That's not a rational fear. Like, that's not based in any truth. And there's like two philosophies you can take. I would take both, but there's like personal life and experience, as I just described, and standing on the shoulders of giants, which is a phrase coined by Isaac Newton, and it means that you get your information from those who've lived a life of wisdom and understanding and knowledge and expertise, and you stand on their shoulders. And they're giants because they're giants in their field, basically. So that would mean reading books from them or listening to lectures, and their understanding of life that they've lived their entire lives for. You get their understanding in, say, maybe a book or just an hour lecture or something, and you didn't have to go through any of what they had to go through, all the struggle and hardships. You understand what they learned in their life through living and their wisdom and their philosophy, and it can rapidly gain you a lot of knowledge to help you in any endeavor instead of having to spend all the time going through the hardships or struggle. And like another example is, well, you can either touch the hot stove or you can trust other people's and say the stove, yeah, that stove's hot. I've seen it cook things before. I think I know what it'd do to my hand. I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen if I put my hand on the stove. And you have to think too, what's the benefit of doing it? There's no benefit to putting your hand on a stove, so why would you do it to even begin with, even if you didn't know that it would burn you? There's no benefit to doing it. That's a great allegory, really, to describe that sometimes personal life experience can be negative, or not personal life experience, I guess, more that you do things on your own without considering what others are saying. It can cause a lot of problems also with you just end up going through all the hardship that you didn't need to go through because you did things on your own with no help or mentors or coaches, when you could have gotten advice from other people. And you should always be open to advice, but that doesn't mean you should accept it. That's another thing that Aristotle, one of the people I put on the thumbnail of this, is don't accept an idea just because it's presented to you. Although I would also add, you should not reject the idea that is simply presented to you. You should always be open-minded, but partially skeptical about any claim or fact that you hear, or what you would perceive as a fact. I know most people wouldn't consider Google a mainstream media outlet, but they run ads on Google for videos explaining crises such as the Virginia Beach crisis, and the advertisements are exploiting the crisis. But if you were on another channel, then you would not see them. But it's another example of fear mongering. They're using the fear created by a crisis to sell you a product. Another way that the media gets people to hate themselves is by modeling magazines. Models are not actually real people in a sense. The way that they look are photoshopped by experts who will spend hours on photoshopping just one picture to make someone look almost completely different to what they actually looked like. And then people see the woman or the man or whatever and think that is the standard of beauty, but that person is not actually a real person. And basically people are trying to live up to an impossible standard, which they use to sell cosmetics. You should also be careful about those who you surround yourself. You want to be around people who support you and cause you to think for yourself, and not those who are imposing on you or feed negativity in your life. It's better to have no friends and not be friends with negative people than to have friends that are negative. To be honest, I really don't have any friends, and I'm perfectly content with that because I know that I'm not getting any negativity in life, and that's the thing. Most people are negative and they don't think for themselves, and so really most of the time you're better off just being by yourself, and have some people there for emotional support. It's all right. Not everybody has to fit your strict standards of friendship. You can always have people who are just generally good people, but it's not everyone, and it's sadly not as many people as I originally thought. You should also know that you should stop using Google because Google is biased, and also not just a confirmation bias, which is a whole nother thing, but it shows there's a link to and a good article by Zero Hedge that explains that the auto completion for Google shows biases towards certain agendas or people or organizations, such as Hillary Clinton, in at least during the 2016 elections. A good chunk of it depends on the time that you do and your previous search results, but it is biased. It's not giving you a neutral search engine results, which most people would expect from Google. That's one of the reasons people go to Google, is because they expect neutral search results, because a lot of people understand that the mainstream media is not trustworthy, so they go to Google, but Google is not trustworthy either. You need to use an alternative search engine, and also stop using the word Google. Say you could use another alternative search engine such as DuckDuckGo, so you could say, instead of Google it, DuckDuckGo it. It might sound a little funny, but you're breaking down the linguistic programming of society for people to use Google, and now they start using DuckDuckGo, so that's one way you can break that monopoly. One of the big issues with YouTube and Google and other search engines is confirmation bias. Great example of this, and you can test this as well. You can search a video that you may have never searched before. Say you search a video on flat earth. I'm not going to say anything about flat earth, but I know a lot of people maybe not have clicked on a video that said flat earth. So if you click on a video that says flat earth and then you click on another video that says flat earth, you'll start to notice that what the videos that YouTube recommends start to become more often videos that are about flat earth rather than the videos that you watched previously. So if you watch enough flat earth videos, you're going to see flat earth. Every video on your feed will become flat earth just about, and it can get people caught up in a rabbit hole, which I believe flat earth is. I don't know if there's flat, round, or if it's a matrix, or if it's even real. It's like, that's not what I'm here to debate, but I'm saying that it gets people caught up in rabbit holes, and it gets people to think a certain way, and they get tunnel vision. They're not open to any new ideas, and they become rigid and narrow-minded, which is not good. So you always want to be open and looking out for new information, and you want to make sure you use another search engine besides Google to look up information, because Google saves your previous searches, so if they have confirmation bias is confirmed on Google as well, because when you search a result, another result similar to it will pop up a lot of times according to your previous search results. So you always want to be open to new ideas, and I would suggest, for example, if you're on YouTube and you're subscribed to channels, try not to subscribe to channels that only confirm your worldview. So let's say you're a vegan. I even do this. I'm subscribed to channels that do not preach veganism or teach it, or they don't believe veganism. I actually am subscribed to a channel that is a raw meat diet channel, and I'm open to anything, and that's really necessary so you don't get fooled into thinking that you know everything and that you can't be possibly wrong, because chances are if you think like that, you are wrong. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and people who think that they're always right are usually wrong. On my website, I have a page called Recommended Media, and I have media that I believe will help you in your journey of life, and it is from a wide variety of sources. So I'm trying to provide as many sources as possible that I believe are truthful, and although they're not unanimous in what they agree on, you can gain a wide variety of understanding and come to your own conclusions from the different sources of media that I have on there. And all of the media that I have on there, I've actually read, watched myself, so I'm not giving you information that I haven't first thought about or read or considered if it was truthful or not. So I wouldn't be fooling you into doing something that I wouldn't do. I've read everything on it. I've read all the books, all the articles, watched all the videos completely. And just because that's the recommended media does not mean that's the only media you should watch or read. You should also read and watch your own. I have not discovered every media source and read every book for sure. I have much more to go on that, and that would take many lifetimes to do that. So you should also read and watch your own videos, read your own books that you think should be read, and just watch as much information as you can from a variety of sources, as much variety as you can. Just things that you completely disagree with, just read it and just watch it. And even if it is completely dishonest, or if you know that it's not truthful, just be open to it. And even if it is, it can help you become less susceptible to the propaganda of the negative media or the lies of it. And also you can use it to debate people, to convince them that they're not correct, although that can be difficult to convince people they're not correct. And I think a great book that can help you with that is Dale Carnegie's How to Influence People. I've read that, and he says that you can't really ever convince anyone. I don't know if that's really true, but I will say it is difficult to convince people. I've tried to do that myself sometimes, and sometimes it'll work, and it just depends on your approach. That's the key thing, though, and you need to influence people to be successful in anything. Just about. That was Next Level Thinking, Episode 3, Critical Thinking and Media Manipulation. Contact me at tinyurl.com/nextlevelthinking, Facebook, on my website, minds.com/nextlevelthinking. You can contact me for questions, comments, or if you wish to be a guest.